there, YouTube. That was Joachim Andersen's Opus 41, number 11, the Moderato. And in this video, we're going to talk about a practice technique where we deconstruct this etude or take it apart and then gradually put the pieces back together again. So it's a little different approach than you may be used to, but hopefully you will find this helpful in your own practicing. So the challenge of this one is we have a single quarter rest in the entire etude. Other than that, we're working the entire time. So our complexity is endurance in this video. So this practice technique delves on reducing complexity, simplifying it, getting that simple thing correct, and then building on that simplicity until eventually all that complexity has been returned or restored. So in this particular etude, the rhythm is not really complex. It's nothing but eighth notes. But what is complex is that endurance, that fact that you don't get a break except for one lonely quarter rest the entire time. So what we're going to do is start by leaving some of the notes out, and then we're going to gradually restore them. So our starting point will be to focus only on the melodic notes, which are the first eighth note and the last eighth note of every measure. That sounds like this. So that gives you a good break in the middle. You have 2 eighth rests in the middle to recover from those staccato notes. Plenty of time to really focus on what those melody notes are doing. But let's explore that melody even further. And we're going to really focus on what the pitches are by, instead of playing those melody notes staccato, we're going to actually glue them together and just play those notes legato. So same notes, we're just now going to hold them instead of playing them staccato. So that sounds very different, but we can learn a lot from that. The first thing we learn is really where those pitches are located. Because we have a longer time to hear those pitches, we become much more familiar with where they are, and then when we have to play them light and staccato, it's much easier to get those pitches correct. But the second thing, and almost the more important thing that we learn, is the phrasing of that melody. So we start to hear, as we play that melody with length, that it sounds really good to phrase or take a breath at the end of every 8 bars. So that would be after the third eighth note. So that's a really coherent line. And then moving on, starting on the last eighth note of that measure, another 8 bars makes a very coherent phrase. So that gives us a good place to breathe even when we're playing all those notes staccato. So we're going to remember that for later. The second best place to breathe is in the 4th bar. So you can hear, even when I breathe in the 4th bar, I'm still breathing in that 8th bar. That 8th bar is the most natural phrase. We're going to breathe there whether we need the air or not, because that's a musical phrase point. But that 4th bar is a place where we can get some additional air if we feel like we need some. So suddenly this etude that looked like it had nowhere to breathe, now we have some musical places that can give us some air. So we've learned a couple good things by taking those melody notes out and playing them with some length. Let's go back and play those melody notes now, staccato the way that they're written. And when you do that after playing that melody longer, you're probably going to find you have a much stronger sense of phrasing of those melody notes, even when they're short. So we're going to want to maintain that phrase that kind of arches in the middle and then fades off at the end. We're going to want to maintain that phrasing the entire way through the etude and as we start to add back these accompaniment notes. So speaking of those two notes, let's start adding them back. We're not going to add them both at first though. For now, let's start with one of the accompaniment notes. So we're going to play every note in the measure except the third one. So by doing that, I still have an eighth rest to breathe, so I'm not panicking about not having any place to rest, but now I get to sort of feel that accompaniment or that less important note that is not part of the melodic line, but I don't want it to interrupt that melodic line. Once I'm really comfortable with that, then I can flip them. So now I'm going to leave out just the second note of every measure. And so on. So the same challenge is true. I'm trying to add that accompaniment note back without getting rid of the connection of that melody. So it may make sense once you've left one note out and then left the other note out, now it's time to introduce both notes, right? However, think about what that step is doing. We're going from having a rest in every single measure to having one lonely quarter rest the entire etude. That's a big leap. So instead of going that route, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play a full measure and then leave a note out. Then a full measure, then leave a note out. That way I'm still getting breaks interspersed there. I'm not getting overly tired, but I can start to reintroduce that complexity a little bit more gradually. Once you've mastered that, then it's easy to see that you can make those full measures longer and longer, 3 in a row, 7 in a row, and so on, until eventually you're playing the entire etude with all of the notes in it. So I hope you find that helpful. I hope you find that a useful way to practice, and we'll see you next time.